All right, our next presentation will be done by Jennifer Heckman. Jennifer is the GIS manager for the University of Virginia. Her presentation is going to give us some insights onto the process that UVA is using with their Miss Utility tickets and their GIS system, and how they're trying to use things currently using GPS to update GIS, and some of the things that they'd like to do as far as the future goes. Jennifer is, as I mentioned, the GIS manager for UVA's Facilities Management Department. Her role includes providing strategic direction, technical advice, and expertise to the GIS services to groups across the university grounds. Prior to coming to UVA, Jennifer was a GIS manager for Lucas County, Ohio, and she provided GIS solutions to county agencies there. She also worked previously as the director and instructor for GIS programs at Rhodes State College in Ohio. She was involved there in the development of curriculum and teaching classes. In fact, she taught the first class of GIS students at that college. Jennifer's background is in geography with an emphasis on GIS for socioeconomic applications. She earned her degree from Bowling Green State University. With that, Jennifer, welcome, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, today I'm going to share with you a little bit about what we do in GIS at UVA and try to relate that back to the excavation and construction processes that impact us. Hopefully you'll see that everything that we do as far as construction-wise, how things get built, the process, it all impacts the GIS department in some way because somebody wants to track that information or analyze that information or just know that there's an excavation site currently out there. So I'll go over some of the projects that we've been doing in the last year and then talk to you a little bit about the technology that we want to use for working with Miss Utility. So in the last year, we've had over 160 projects. And when we get project requests, I consider that something more than just printing out a map for somebody to see where some utilities are. But so these 160 projects are for services all across ground. So the Miss Utility process and utility locating is one component that we fit in with everything else that we're doing in a day's work. My staff consists of myself and 3 other individuals. I have 1 field technician and 2 GIS analysts. So it's a lot for 4 people to serve, the entire university. But we're building an enterprise service, so we're small now, but we hope to grow. Some of the people that we've been providing services to are the UVA police. We help them with investigation support and beat maps. So it's important for them to know if there's construction in their areas. So that way, if there's traffic concerns and they need to respond to a particular area, we have construction projects there that are blocking emergency vehicles that really impacts them. The Office of Engagement, this is for housing and points of interest. Students are our main service. Providing education to students. So we have a large student focus on keeping them informed on what's going on grounds. So working with the housing department, we keep them abreast of utility outages, excavations, things of that nature. Some of the other things, visitor mapping, I'll show you an example of our visitor map. Contractors, we provide utility data and maps to various contractors. So if you're somebody who's responding to an RFP, or you're the person that's doing excavation, we can supply you with the data from our GIS system, and we get frequent requests for that. That can be in either a GIS format or a CAD format. We are encouraging people to use our data in the native GIS format, but we do still get a lot of requests for CAD information. we also get requests from different places that just need small things. So I have the Alderman Library on here. And that's just for, can you tell people where our library services are? So we just provide basic mapping for, here's where something is, something as small as that. And then the Office of the Architect, we provided them with a website application for memorial trees. You may think, what does memorial trees have to do with excavating and construction projects? But donors purchase trees and they're across grounds. They have plaques on them. So there's a considerable amount of dollar behind that tree that's out there representing a loved one of someone. And so when we do construction projects, we have to make sure that our excavation is done in a particular manner when you're close to that tree. So within a certain buffer of that tree, really the drip edge of the tree where the roots collect water, you have to be very careful in those sites. And so we do some analysis between where that tree is located, where our utilities are located, and where the construction project site actually is. So a lot that goes into a memorial tree. We also work with the Office of Emergency Preparedness, just providing them with events. So this could be a weather-related event, like the derecho, for our systems control center, for utility outages and buildings. So that's a whole big group that we provide a consultation role for them. And then we have all of the facilities management departments. So that could be housing, landscaping, operations and maintenance. So there's just various applications for them. We've been doing a lot of application development. We used to contract out for all of our application development, and now we're building skills in-house to do our own applications. So I'm going to try to show you one of our sites. This site that I'm going to show you is designed for our water distribution staff to be able to edit their own GIS information. So when they're out in the field, rather than coming back to our office every day and telling us we opened a valve here, we closed a valve there, we wanted to put something in their hands that lets them maintain the information in their distribution system. Okay, I'll go over this one real quick. So what we've done is build a Silverlight site for the utilities. So we can look at any of our systems, chilled water, domestic hot water, heating water, and our steam system. So if I want to edit some of the infrastructure of my system, I select a valve that I want to edit, and I want to say this valve is now closed. So I've done some maintenance on the system. I'm closing down this valve to isolate. Maybe there's a break. Maybe it's just preventative maintenance. I can go into this little editor, close that. Maybe we put in a different style of valve. I can go in here and change what type of valve that was put in the system. The staff can also just do some QC on our data. So we have the diameter of the valve fitting here. So we ask them to check that as well. So, and this is on a proposed project site. So we actually have information in there, not just for our current utilities, but the projects that have planned utilities that go with them. So, but this puts our data and tools in the hands of the users. That way we don't have to do this with my 3 staff for everything that every distribution utility system is working on. So that was something that we used to have to contract out to do, but now we're building our own applications. Okay. Let's see if that other site will work. I think that one's gonna work. That one's just our memorial tree site. It's from, if you go to UVA's Office of the Architect site and look at their memorial trees, the application that's running there is the site that we did. So new technology, we have some redundancy now in our GIS, so that way we have failover as we're supporting emergency response. And we have, right now, we currently have Draper Aiden doing our utility locating for us. So if one of our servers goes down that has our mapping application, that utility information on, it fails over to another server, so that way we always have our information up and running. We purchased recently a new Trimble GPS unit, so we're going out in the field and collecting all the above-ground surface utility infrastructure. So, as you guys know, as-builts really aren't really as-built, at least in my experience. So a lot of our GIS information was built using as-built documentation. And so what we're doing is going into the field with our survey-grade GPS units and capturing all the locations of those that utility infrastructure and verifying that against the as-built. I'll show you some examples of how that's changed our accuracy of our data. Some of the other things that we're doing with the utility locating is we're developing specifications to put marker balls in with all of our new utilities. And then beyond just the new utility installations, whenever we have repair, if the utility has been excavated, we're developing the specifications to put marker balls in those areas. That's going to affect how we do our utility locating going forward. With having those RFID marker balls in there, we have to use a particular type of technology. I'm sure you guys are using some of that technology yourselves. But that will be critical for us because we have infrastructure that goes back to the 1800s. We don't have plans and documentation for all of the infrastructure back in the 1800s. So as we excavate and do repairs, we'll put in those marker balls, and that will give us more accurate documentation on where our infrastructure is. This is an example of one of the school mapping projects that we did, just with the visitor map and then floor plans within that facility. This is an example of, before we used to do the GIS information up to a building. So the utilities we would show, once you hit that building wall, you didn't know what happened inside the facility. Well, when you have a utility that enters in on the north side of the building and pops out the west side of the building, and another utility that enters on the south and comes out the east, you have no idea what is happening within that facility. So it made it really hard for our locators and the excavators and project managers to know what utility was associated with the other utilities that they could see around the facility. So we started drawing in the utilities within the facility. So I'm sure you guys can see how complicated this is within this facility. You have one system coming in here, it comes out of the facility as dual temperature, hot water running alongside the chilled, medium temperature coming out the other side. In this mechanical room, all of this is going on with the pumping and conversion. So this was actually an area that we had actually an emergency ticket called in because they were doing some excavation up along this side of the facility, and they didn't see that the system changed between right in here in the facility when it came out the other side on the mapping, since we didn't have anything, depicting what was going on here. So we actually missed some markings of the utilities, so now we won't miss those markings anymore. This is an example of the GPS work that we've been doing. So you can see the high voltage lines up here in our sanitary system. We did GPS collection. So this is the high voltage from GPS, this is the sanitation. This is the high voltage from GPS. Let's see. When we show the data corrected, you can see that the location of those utilities are nowhere near where they were before. I'll point out this area too. You can just go back. You see this water line that was going through in this area. That's how it was drawn out from the as-built. We picked up a water valve here that we had no idea that was there until we were on the ground. And this is actually where the infrastructure is. So if you're doing utility locating, you're expecting all your utilities to be here. This is quite an issue. This is an example of some work we're doing in 3D. So this shows the sanitary system, and these are manholes. So we're doing elevations in and out, and combining that with the building 3D and the terrain, we'll eventually have a 3D model to where you can see with all the utility systems, not just the sanitary, but the other ones as well, what pipe is over top of which, where the electrical's running, so that way you can get that profile perspective. So we're starting with the sanitary system because it was the easiest one, the gravity system. There's a lot less data to put into it for a proof of concept that we could actually do this. This is an example of some information back from our utility locators from Draper Aid, and they went out and located. And this water line from the as-built ran through here. When they did the utility locating, they picked it up here. And so the change in our process is not just putting paint on the ground, but bringing back information into the GIS when you found that it's different than the original mapping that you were using. So this is a difference of 10 feet where the as-built showed the infrastructure versus where they picked it up when they did the locating. And so they picked it up with GPS information and delivered that back to our office. So now we've updated this to reflect where that utility really is. Some other things, we're doing some reporting for different areas, so that way they know what type of infrastructure is within their preventative maintenance grounds areas. So this is just an example of all that information that we're GPSing, of the counts and the types of those that are in the different areas. So that way the grounds managers know what infrastructure is in their area. We have a lot of utility locating that happens at particular times of the year at UVA. One of those is graduation. We have an insurmountable number of tickets for tents. And we have a lot of our problems with damage coming from tent stakes, because either the company doesn't call in a ticket, or I don't know what all happens, but I'm kind of scared to know what might all happen. But so what we started doing was, with our special events, we started mapping out these special events that are reoccurring events. So this is an example of at graduation, the graduation setup at the rotunda. So we started with just the chairs, the podiums, the speakers, tables, where that infrastructure is set up, and then the next phase is to run where that where the utilities come from for that event setup. So that will hopefully get us away from a lot of the damage that happens with tent setup around graduation. And this is another one, an example at the amphitheater. This is an example of our emergency preparedness use of utility information. So we have a lot of generators on grounds for our emergency plans. And so we have a temporary generator that gets placed here. And this is a special medical needs shelter. And so they needed to know where the utilities are coming from. If we put in another generator, where do we have redundancy? And then the setup within the facility, they need to know where electrical outlets were in this facility to set up cots for the special medical needs. This is an example of some new technology that we're piloting. This is a form that goes along with it, and I didn't bring the digital pen with me today, but it runs off of a digital pen. So it's a pen that has an ink stick in it. So you'd print out this form, and you would write on this form just like any other form that you would fill out. But you bring this pen back, and you dock it by USB, and it uploads information into your GIS. So these would be the attributes about the features that you have out there in your mapping system. And then you also print out a map, and the pen draws on that map, and you can locate features on that map too. So we're piloting that, especially for our field crew who's not comfortable with a lot of technology use. To them, it just looks like paper and pen. They know nothing different. They bring back the pen, they dock it, and go on about their work. Something different with our services, over the past year, we just went through a reorganization of our services. And so now we're the Geospatial Resource Center, not just the GIS Center. So we're combining our GIS services, our records management, and our utility locating out of one office. So that way, hopefully, we combine this process of as-built documentation for projects from our project managers, the utility locating. So if we're locating for utilities and excavation, we should have record documents for that, for proposed work area, so it's kind of like a check and balance. We shouldn't have excavation without a misutility ticket. We shouldn't have excavation without record documents. And we should be out there in the field doing GPS to get that information back into our GIS, so. And I do want to try to show you our website that has all of our utility information on it. Okay, so this is our public portal to our GIS site. If you're doing work with the university and you need to see utility information, we process a user access login for you, and then you would sign into the system down here, so that way you can actually get past the public viewer portion. So it's going to connect and ask me for a password again. Okay, so this is the public side. So you see we only get one theme under the public side, and that's just our general grounds theme. But this is enough for just the general information when we have excavation and projects around grounds. If it loads. Okay, so the one that we're really interested in is this outages, projects, and excavations. So you can go here and look at our site, and you can see which facilities are going to have a utility outage, which areas have construction or excavation, and then if there's a traffic alert associated with that construction area. This should pop up. Let's see. Those are all an outage. And I'm not seeing the construction ones. It's running really slow too. Here's some construction here. So you see this little kind of like a grayed out area. There's construction that's going on there. It tells you construction ends August 31st of 2014. So this is a long-term project. So we'll have a lot of utility locating in this area. There's some up here. This is the Academical Village on the range and lawn section, and the work on the rotunda that they're doing. But this is just a basic information portal, so that way people can see where we have construction going on. That's it. Anybody have any questions?
Anyone with questions for Jennifer?
Well, it depends on what kind of tent it is. Currently, we have a temporary dining facility that's a tent. It's a 2-story steel structure, but it is a tent. But the stakes for that, I believe, were 9 feet. So, yeah. So it depends on what kind of tent they're putting up. Yeah, the large ones. I think that's probably the largest stakes that we've had associated with a tent. But the structure is really, really big. Yeah.
What percentage of your campus, all the facilities, what percentage of the facilities are within GIS or GPS? Because there's people get confused when you say GPS and GIS.
Our facilities, all of our buildings are within the GIS system. We have all facilities on there. We even have proposed facilities on the mapping.
Underground facilities,
Oh, underground facilities? How many are underground?
a rough guess.
I would say we have at least, not whole facilities, but at least maybe with partial underground facilities, 10 of them have an underground piece of the facility. Is that what you're asking?
No, I do have underground facilities going across the entire campus, okay, water lines, et cetera.
Okay.
What percentage of those facilities are within, have been GPS and inputted into your GIS system?
We have 17,000 points of above surface facilities, and of those, we've GPSed 10,000 of those above ground portions. So of the underground portion that we can't see, when it's exposed, we're collecting that information. We just started collecting that information over the last year, so it's not a large portion that has been verified with GPS, but whenever it's exposed, we're collecting the location.
Do you have an ETA on when you think everything will be into the system? The reason why I'm asking is, it's no small project to do something like this for all utilities that are here.
Right. Well, we have, whether the utility has been GPSed or not, we have the infrastructure in the GIS from as-built documentation or CAD files that were delivered. So whether we took it from plans or whether we took it from the drawings from CAD, everything that we had is in the GIS. So all of that's in there. Now it's the process of verification. So when it's exposed, we're doing the GPS data collection to verify that, yes, that is where it is truly located. But it is, I mean, we would never, I would guess to say we will never have all of it GPSed because hopefully we don't have to dig it all up. So if it's in there already, if there's a part of it that we can verify above the ground, we will do that.
Did you say you were using a contractor to do the underground locating?
Yes, currently we're using Draper-Aden to do that. We had an employee retire back in May who was with us for about 40 years. And so with his retirement, we contracted that out, but we will be bringing that back in-house and doing that. We'll be posting a position for that this fall.
How did you document the infrastructure inside the buildings? Is that just sketched, or is that actually, did you use, can't we use a GPS inside the building?
Well, it's drawn, there's a couple different things that you can do within the facility. So that digital pen that I talked about, you can print out the floor plans, and so you can mark certain equipment on that and then go from there with your outside connections. So you put the outside connections on your floor plan, and then using the plan documentation and looking in the mechanical room together, then we sketch that in the GIS based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was a very informative presentation. Certainly, I hope you all are able to see how you as utility operators can benefit from using GIS system if you're not using one already. And to me, the fascinating part about it too is you're not the only ones who benefit. Some of the other folks that you're involved with, especially if you're a municipality or a university like Virginia Tech or UVA, you have so many constituents, customers, whatever you want to call them, who, in some degree or another, need to have the ability to know where your data is, or certainly it helps them with planning and such. It helps you too, because it helps minimize some of those impacts on your facilities. So very, I enjoyed the presentation greatly. So thank you for your willingness to share with us.